So I've had a busy morning. I got my booster shot. I had to mail a package. I had to do a bunch of stuff with the dog. The booster shot happened to be at my old high school, so that was fun. High school flashbacks. No. On the note of high school, uh, we now know who the UA traitor is. Although I would kind of put it more as yes, they're technically a traitor, but it's not like they were necessarily doing it out of malicious intent. So, obviously, for those of you who have, read the latest chapter when this comes out, um, it was revealed that, Aoyama Yuga can't stop Twinkling was the traitor. And we find out why throughout the course of the chapter, and we get a bit more of his backstory and different things like that. And admittedly, I had the whole concept in my head of, you can see why certain people would be thought of as like, oh, this one could be the traitor, or this one could be the traitor. Like, at the end of the previous chapter, Horikoshi pulled the old switcheroo and, made us think that, oh, it's Toru, it's Hagakure, that's the traitor, because like they foreshadowed that. And then it starts off with, you see her in the forest and like there's, talking and overlay and everything like that. And it's just like, no, it's not her. And I actually avoided trying to see who the traitor was until I read the chapter. And I would put it as levels of surprise of, I don't think, I just don't know where to put that, where it's like how surprised I was with oh, it's Yugo. Why am I not surprised by that? Why am I not as surprised as I should have been? Why did, and I put this kind of more, I'm a little rambly, sorry. I kind of put this as Horikoshi kind of wanted to show us that, yeah, there's a lot of other people that are, willingly villains, and, like Dabi and, Toga and Twice and, Spinner, excuse me, and, a bunch of them and Shigaraki and everything. They're more willingly villains. They are very much doing this for the sheer pleasure of hurting people, causing pain, destruction, whatever you want to call it. They're doing that because they very much want to. That's just something that they want to do. Whereas we find out throughout this chapter and from Yuga and from his parents that that's not exactly the case with him. For all intents and purposes, what we get for the backstory of what happened with him is that when he was a little kid, just the same as Izuku, he was quirkless. And he is a foreigner. We know that him and his parents, I believe, are from France, which is why, he kind of, uses, mon amour and, different things like that all the time and everything. Whenever he's talking, he has those different, French sayings and stuff like that that come in to his, speech pattern. And him and his parents, he didn't want to be, he would have been in a very similar situation to what Izuku was in, where he was, shamed and bullied and everything like that in regards to being quirkless. And his parents seemed to have more of an ability to possibly be able to find something, and I'm assuming through some form of back channel type thing, that they became aware of, All for One. And they did get a quirk for Yuga, and they met All for One, and he gave him a quirk, and it was the naval laser, which is why he even says to Izuku, when they're working on training their super moves, and when him and Izuku start to be more friends, he even says, so it's like, your quirk is like mine. Your body is not built for your quirk. That's why your quirk keeps hurting you. And he even says, it's like, my body is not designed for this quirk. That's why he has his, that's why he has his support item, his, belt thing that he wears all the time, that he's had for a very long time. And, looking back, that was probably something that was possibly designed by the psycho doctor that works for All for One, or just by someone else that All for One had around. By the way, in and of itself, can someone please imagine the concept of All for One having naval laser as one of his quirks? Okay, I get why that would be. I see why, because the way that Yuga uses it is a very good quirk to use and everything. It's like you have a laser ready at your disposal, and then he has his suit. Of course, it helps him like focus it in different areas and everything like that, and he can use it that way. And he's getting stronger at being able to control the amount of output that he has with it. Yes, it still causes some problems and everything, as we've seen throughout the course of the series. It still makes him sick every time he uses it for too long, but he's working on getting better with that. But he was a child when he was given this quirk, and it's basically, All for One was basically like, okay, yeah, I'll give you this quirk, but in exchange, you and your parents now basically work for me. You are my little marionettes, my puppets to control as I wish. And we saw him do the same thing when we get the flashback where we see the memories of the first, One for All user, his brother, where we see him and, we see him and, All for One talking, and where All for One takes, the quirk from one guy and gives it to the other guy. And he says, now both of you now owe me something in return. And, we see him do this again and again and again. Basically, that's what he's been doing for the past, 100 some years, is, moving quirk from one person to another. Oh, this person won't work for me, but they have a really good quirk. So I'll just take their quirk and then I'll give it to someone who will work for me, or I'll just keep it for myself. Or, insert move around quirks, and then like, oh, this person didn't want to work for me, so I'll just kill them and take their quirk. Well, take their quirk and then kill them, actually. Because, like, oh, you're dead. I can't take your quirk now. Darn it. Should have thought that through. And then, give it to someone who will work for him, or keep it himself, like he has done in the past, with quite a few of his different quirks. And, can someone just and he built up this entire empire of, villains and everything that would work for him and do as he wished. Oh, okay, so you want this quirk? Okay. I'm going to give you this quirk, and then you're going to go and rob that bank for me, or you're going to go and sneak into this company and get me this information, or you're going to do this for me, or you're going to do that for me. And it's you go down this cycle of getting further and further and further down the rabbit hole of falling more and more into his control, because it's just like, you did this, so now you're a villain anyway, so you might as well just keep working for me. And this seems to be the same thing that he did with Yuga and his parents, with Aoyama and his parents, that he gave Yuga a quirk when he was a kid, and then it's basically like oh, you now basically work for me, now you and your parents are mine, and if you don't do what I tell you to, I will kill your parents, type of thing. And, intimidation tactics are definitely something All for One is very good at. I'm not going to deny that. But what we see through the course of this chapter is, Yuga and his parents talking, and, it would be one thing if, Yuga seemed extremely confident about the way that he was, oh yes, I'm actually a villain, and I've been playing everyone in the class so well for the past, year or so, and, I was groomed by All for One to do all of this, and I actually knew Shigaraki, and like I did all this other stuff. And, and like, like if his parents were like, oh yes, we're so proud of you, son, that would be a completely different thing. If that was the case, if that was the way that Yuga was acting, if that was the way that his parents were acting, then instantly we would all be like, oh yes, he's definitely the traitor. Yes, just get rid of him. There's no redemption for him here. But that's not the way that Yuga is acting. It's definitely not. Yuga's, the whole time that we see him throughout this whole chapter, him and his parents are crying the entire time. And we get to witness this because like Hagakure has like followed Yuga into the forest, and like they're actually two of the ones that work really well together. They both interned under the same hero, and they actually work really well because she can refract light and bend it, and his neighbor laser is light, and she can bend that light and use it to like redirect it. So they work really, really well together. And what we see, of course, is Toru's in the forest, and she's, Forest of UA on the grounds, and she's watching Yuga and his parents talk. And, we see how scared they are and how much they're crying and scared and sorry. And like his parents even say, if we had known that this is what would have happened, that this was his plan all along, we never would have done this. We never would have gotten you that quirk. We never would have tied ourselves to this. And we see his parents saying, it's as much as we want to, it's too late to ignore his orders. We can't ignore his orders. We can't, prevent, we can't try to stop him now because we're too far into it. We have to keep doing what he says, because in the second they attack UA, if we don't do what he says, he's going to kill us. And of course, Yuga loves his parents. He clearly loves his parents. Most of the parents that we've seen throughout the course of My Hero, barring Endeavor, do very much love their children, because like Inko loves Izuku very, very much. We have no idea about Izuku's father, but like the intensive purpose father figure he has is All Might, and he very much cares for Izuku. And Ray, Shoto's mom, cares for him and his siblings. And we see all of this, and Yuga's parents, we've seen his mom once before, in the manga and in the anime, when All Might is during the Battle of Camino Mord, when All Might is fighting against All for One, and we see him and his mom, and we just assume that this is just, he's just like scared watching this fight, because like this is his teacher that's fighting, and he's fighting against this really powerful villain, and there's like all these civilians that are still around, and like Bakugo is still there and everything, and like we see him and his mom watching this, and we see how scared they become. But we find out that they were worried about like, if All Might loses and nothing's going to happen, if nothing's going to change, but if All Might wins, then maybe we'll be free of this. We'll be free of having to follow his orders and do as he says, and free of Yuga having to be a spy more and be a traitor and everything. But that's not the case. All for One, Shigaraki was still out there along with the rest of the league. And, they may not have been a huge presence for a little while, but in regards to Yuga, because like I don't think they even found out that like Kami had been being impersonated by Toga. I don't know if they ever even found that out, or if Class 1A ever learned about that. But obviously that's still there. And then of course now with All for One on the run again, with having Shigaraki and the two of them like merging into one and everything, he's just even more powerful, even with the damage that was just done to him by Star and Stripe. And we get the whole flashback with him where it's like he was quirkless and he didn't want to be this outcast, and so they got him a quirk, and they wouldn't have done it if they had known what would have happened. And like Yuga is like, I just wanted to live, or his parents are just like, we just wanted you to be able to live out your dreams like everybody else, wanted you to be a hero. He wanted to be a hero the same way that Izuku wanted to be a hero. Admittedly, Aoyama's version of being a hero is much more flashy and everything than Izuku's is, but he still wanted to be a hero. He still wanted to save people. And yeah, that would have been like him in the spotlight and everything, but he wants to save people. And we have seen throughout the course of the series that he does still want to help people. We have also seen, unfortunately, throughout the course of the series, now looking back on it, that like, the attack at the USJ, we didn't know where Yuga was throughout that whole time frame. He was just not there, and he's just like, I went and hid somewhere. Okay. And then, when they're at the Wild Wild Pussycats place, when they're doing the training camp, when the Vanguard Action Squad attacks, we had found out via what his parents said that, you had gotten information about like where you guys were at the mountain and everything, at the training camp and everything, that you were able to get him that information, and that was good. And then that's why the Vanguard Action Squad is able to attack, and they are then fight, that's why they then attack, and they release the gas and everything. And like, it's basically shown that like Dabi sees where Yuga is. Now the question is, does Dobby know that Yuga was working for All For One, and like he was told by like All For One and Shigaraki of like, okay, yeah, there's this kid in the class, his name's Yuga, shows him a picture of him. If he's not doing anything against you, don't hurt him, he's working for me. We don't know if that was the case, but we do know that, Yuga was hiding when Dobby showed up at the summer camp, and that Dobby didn't attack him, even though he probably knew that Yuga was there. Now, admittedly, Dobby may have just been like, oh, this person isn't causing me any trouble, so they're not really going to be any fun to fight, so I'm just going to leave them alone. And that might have been like the blatant context of it at the beginning. Now, whether or not Horikoshi had decided that, oh, Yuga is going to be the traitor from the very beginning, he did say at one point, I think either an interview or in something about Yuga, that he's just like, I just don't really know what to do with the character. I just like drawing him. And, he's kind of more the, pretty boy, Bashonen, whatever that is, where he's just more this pretty boy type thing. And Yuga does pull that off rather well. And he's very much like the knight in shining armor is literally what his, concept is. It's like he's this, amazing knight in shining armor, and he's here to help save the day and everything. And, Ida's kind of also that knight in shining armor, but Ida's costume isn't nearly as flashy as Aoyama's is, literally. But he had to get them information, and he had to do all of this stuff. And like, while this is happening in the chapter, I'm like, there's stuff at the beginning of the chapter, but I'm not super diving into that at the moment. But mostly the stuff that's going on with Yuga and his parents, and like Hagakure is like watching this from the outside, and like we see him and his parents talking and everything, and like they're all just like crying and scared. And it's not that his parents wanted him to be a villain or anything like that. They did not want that for him. They are just as like, they're just upset with themselves as they are with anything else. They don't blame Yuga for this. They blame each other to a degree. And they're just like, don't hate yourself for what happened. You blame us type of a thing. And, throughout the course of the series, we've seen, different parts of Yuga. We've seen him, he has gotten braver throughout the course of the series when they're doing the, hero license exam. He's very much scared in it and everything, and then like Ida comes along and the two of them work together, and like Aoyama uses his laser to basically act as a beacon of just like, let's have everybody attack me, and then like you can attack all of them and everything. And like he still ends up passing, of course, and he goes on to be in the do an internship, do the work study and everything with Toru, with Hagakure, and and they work really well together down the line. So he's gotten better, and like we see him, getting stronger and stronger with his naval laser, and he's basically kind of doing not like an exact parallel to what Izuku is doing, because as powerful as naval laser can be, once Yuga gets more control over it, I would still say that One for All is still quite a bit stronger than that, because there's a physical ability behind it. There's the fact that Izuku basically has like 6 quirks, or 5 or 6 quirks. But Yuga is still very much trying to take this quirk that he was given and make it his own. And for a time frame in there, until they get more information about like, oh yeah, there's this, there is this hospital, and we have to go and attack this hospital and deal with these Nomu and fight here and everything. And fight against, the villains, the League of Villains again, plus the, Paranormal Liberation Army and everything. That what we see happen is Izuku, or what we see happen for Yuga is that, he's gaining more confidence and everything. He's opening up a bit more to the class, and we see him and Izuku make more of a friendship. I do not think that he did that friendship with Izuku to get closer to Izuku. As in a malicious intent kind of way. I don't think that was the case. I think it was just that he happened to just become more friendly with Izuku, because he saw this kindred spirit with Izuku, the fact that they both have these quirks that they can't quite control and that aren't exactly designed the best for their bodies, and Yuga just he wanted another friend and everything like that. And he's always kind of been kind of one of the more standoffish ones of the class. Not that him and the other students didn't get along at times, because we see him have moments with Ida and everything, but And then, of course, he gets better during, the dancing and everything. And that's when him and Izuku more have, more of a friendship there and everything. That, he's building more confidence and he's more in depth. He's more intent on making that quirk that he was given his own. Just the same way that Izuku was doing with his quirk. But in his case, he was given it by this very malicious individual, this very evil individual, whereas Izuku was given it by All Might. And there's a big difference there. And now the whole class, of course, knows about the fact that Izuku is the one that had, all for one or one for all and everything. And it's a possibility. I mean, at this point in time, we know that All for One knew that Izuku had the quirk. I don't know exactly if we find out when he figured that out, but I do have to admit, All for One is a very smart man, and he probably figured out that, oh, there's this kid that has this quirk that's very similar to what All Might has. And All Might is losing his quirk now, so that kid must be the one that has the quirk. And he was able to figure that out, deduce that, and then with, Yuga getting that information, he probably found a way to get that information to All for One because, if he didn't, him and his parents would be punished or killed or whatever. And he probably got that information to him, and that's, one of the other ways, maybe Yuga had to, inform him anytime that they found out any information about where Izuku was. Don't know, that wasn't stated specifically in the chapter, but we do see at the end of the chapter that Izuku shows up in the forest where they are and where, Yuga and his parents are, and Izuku shows up and he's just very confused as to seeing what's going on and everything because Toru called him or texted him or something. It's hey, come here, there's something in the forest that you need to see and everything. And we see them, we see Yuga and, Izuku come face to face, and they're kind of Yuga is not by any means the heir to All for One, because no, that's Shigaraki at the moment, as much as he's kind of not 100% on board with everything that's going on right now. But, Yuga and Izuku come face to face, and Izuku is probably the one that Yuga is the closest to in class, barring Hagakure. And even then, they happen to make a really good team. And, probably from the moment that Yuga got into UA, he was probably basically told by All for One that was okay, now you're in UA. You got a quirk that's enough to get you into UA, and you happen to get in. Now you're going to have to do what I tell you to all the time. Get me information about how to get into the USJ. Get me information about this and that and this and that. And again and again and again. Every time that there's this opening for us to be able to attack, tell me. And, Yuga unfortunately had to do it. And, we see this moment where Izuku is just Aoyama-kun, you're the one who looked the most depressed after the battle at Gunga Mountain. I figured something was up and I came looking for you. And, Yuga just looks at him and he's just I helped them, Midoriya-kun. I'm a scumbag villain. But he's doing it with tears rolling down his face, and we get this flashback to where we see where Izuku had spread, or not where Izuku, but where Izuku had woken up in the middle of the night at one point, and he sees the cheese spread out in katakana. That was the I know your secret or whatever the case was. And whether or not he was told by All for One to then try to become Izuku's friend and gain his confidence to maybe lure him somewhere off campus, I don't know. But maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I kind of hope it wasn't, but it may have been he wanted to become friends with him anyway, and then All for One just kind of used that type of thing, and they just kind of made it worse. Oh, you want to become friends with him anyway? Go ahead, find me more information about him. He might be useful for me to pull away, and I can take his quirk one way or another type of thing. And predictions as to what I think is going to happen in regards to Yuga. I'm pretty sure that what's going to happen possibly in the next chapter, depending on stuff, because it kind of ends on that moment with Yuga and Izuku staring at each other. and like Hagakure is still there, and like his Aoyama's parents are there, and for all we know, some of the rest of the class might be showing up very quickly. But what I think might happen is either A, Yuga is going to end up telling the rest of the class, yes, okay, so this is what happened. This is what happened. All these, this whole part of my life, this is what's been going on. And like his parents explain and everything. And like we get this whole explanation a little bit more, basically reiterating basically what, we just found, what the reader just found out to the class and to the teachers. And, I had to do it because he would have killed my parents. And like, I definitely see Bakugo being very angry about it. I definitely see Todoroki being somewhat angry. Possibly Ida as well. I can see a couple of the class being a much more, very distanced themselves again from Aoyama again and not wanting to trust him now. I can very much see those trust issues coming into play. But I can also see that, Nezu, the little manipulative mouse that he is, he may decide to be like, okay, what can we use of this to our advantage? We know that we now have a tiny bit more time before Shigaraki is able to fight again because of all the damage that was done to him by Star and Stripe and New Order. We got that information. We've got more time now. Not a lot more time, but a couple of more days. We now know who the person was that was now giving information to All for One. And I can see that some of the class probably won't want to trust him. But I can kind of see maybe Izuku wanting to still trust him. Wanting to give him a chance to, fix himself, to, redeem himself. And like, him having to redeem himself is very different than like Toga or Dabi having to redeem themselves, or Twice, or Shigaraki. Not that Twice can redeem himself anymore because he's dead. But, there's a big difference between like Yuga doing that and one of them doing it. With Yuga, he clearly wants to be a hero. He wanted to be a hero from the very beginning. We've seen him put in his all at times, at various points to protect people and to help his friends and everything like that. But he is also, the one that was the traitor. And, anyone who had picked Yuga as the one that they thought was the traitor, I mean, you win the solid gold Cupid doll. You win that. But it's not exactly the same as, him, being a traitor because he wanted to do it because of malicious intent. Because he wanted to cause trouble, because he wanted to watch Hero Society fall, because he was like so, loyal to All for One. His loyalty was out of fear for his own life and for his parents' life, because if All for One, if he didn't give All for One what he wanted, the information that he wanted, didn't give him the information on how to get into the USJ or the time frame that they were going to be there, didn't give them about how to get to, the training camp, didn't give them the information about, probably wasn't able to give them the information about like when they were exactly going to attack against the Paranormal Liberation Army, but still, he had, like even if he was kind of, told to try to develop this friendship with Izuku, he may have also been told to try to like develop relationships with the other students in the class as well. And it just happened to be like he was able to zero in on the fact that, oh, Izuku and I have a similar thing where like our bodies don't work together. Our bodies and our quirks aren't designed for each other. Izuku's causes him to break his arms and his legs. Mine causes me to, get sick every time that I use my laser. Uraraka gets sick every time she overuses her quirk, which is different. Yuga gets sick almost every time that he uses his naval laser, and it really, really drains him a lot more because obviously, just like Izuku with One for All, he was not designed for that quirk. That quirk was not, naturally part of his body. It was given to him. Given to him. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but I think that it's either going to be, they try to use now the fact that they know who the traitor is and try to use that to their advantage. in regards to the fact of using that of like, okay, so we know that there's going to be an attack probably. We know that Shigaraki is going to be ready very shortly, and we want to try to attack either before that happens so we can try to stop, prevent that from happening again, cause more damage to him, cause more damage to their ranks. And, I think Yuga will probably want to help with that, want to try to prove that he is sorry for what he did and try to fix what he did wrong and all of that. And I think that's probably going to happen. But the other side of that is that he may not be able to, he may not be able to, redeem himself or be able to help enough to fix what he's done wrong. And the other side of that is also is like, how much of the class are still going to want to trust him? The class and the teachers and the other heroes are still going to want to trust him after he's been the cause of all of this. You're the cause of all of this. You're one of the reasons so much of this has happened. You're one of the reasons that like Aizawa and 13 got so hurt during the USJ. You're one of the reasons that like Bakugo was kidnapped. You're one of the reasons that like that Ragdoll lost her quirk. You're one of the reasons that like, so much of this other stuff happened. You're one of the reasons behind this. And I can definitely see Bakugo getting extremely angry at him for that. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest with Bakugo getting angry about that. But I don't know exactly. Either he's going to try to fix it and the class is like, they're going to be like, he's sorry and, he is still our friend and he wants to do better and everything. And I see Izuku being like the voice of reason for that. Or the complete twist would be like if Bakugo was like the complete, the one that was like in his corner and like, let's give him a chance type of thing. I don't see that. I see Izuku more doing that. Izuku or Hagakure doing that more than Bakugo or most of the rest of the class. And I see Nezu wanting to use like, okay, so we have part of an advantage here. We know who the traitor is. They don't know that we know who the traitor is. Then again, there's always a whole thing of like, could there be another traitor in the school somewhere? Could there be a teacher that's a traitor? Could there be another student that's a traitor? We don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. But I don't know where to place my level of surprise about Aoyama being the one that was the traitor or not. I'm not sure. I don't know where to place that. I honestly don't. I do know that I am now done with this video because I'm running out of time and I have to go watch my cousin play Clara in the Nutcracker Delights for a ballet performance. So that'll be fun. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Unless we can face that which pains us, we can never truly sparkle.